The air in the throne room is thick, heavy with the scent of cedarwood smoke, baked clay, and the collective sweat of nervous anticipation. We are in Babylon, under the reign of its sixth and most famous king, Hammurabi. Sunlight, fractured by high, narrow windows, cuts through the dust motes, illuminating a scene of absolute power. At the far end of the hall, upon a dais carved with reliefs of protective spirits, sits the king. He is not merely a man, he is the shepherd appointed by the gods, the living embodiment of law and order. And approaching him is a subject, a farmer perhaps, or a petitioner seeking justice. He does not walk with his head held high. His steps are measured, his gaze fixed on the polished stone floor. As he reaches the prescribed distance from the throne, he stops. Then, in a single, fluid motion, he folds, knees, then hands, then torso, until his forehead meets the cool, unforgiving ground. He performs proskinesis, the full prostration. This is a total surrender of body and will. This is not a gesture of simple respect, like a nod or a slight bow. This is a political and social sacrament. In the ancient Near East, the hierarchy was not a theory, it was a physical reality performed daily. To prostrate before the king was to publicly and unequivocally accept one's place in the cosmic order. It was to say, my life is in your hands. My will is subordinate to yours. You are the nexus between the divine realm and our earthly existence. This act was deeply embedded in the legal and cultural fabric of civilizations, from Sumer and Akkad to Assyria and Babylon. The famous Code of Hammurabi, inscribed on a towering black diorite stele, depicts the king receiving the laws directly from the sun god, Shamash. This imagery reinforces the central idea: the king's authority is not self-made, it is divinely ordained. Therefore, to defy the king was to defy the gods themselves. The prostration was the physical affirmation of this entire worldview. It was a contract written not with ink, but with the human body. Let's analyze the semiotics of this act, the language it speaks without words. By placing one's face, the very seat of identity and consciousness, onto the earth, the subject symbolically erases their own individuality in the presence of the sovereign. They become part of the ground upon which the king stands, a foundation for his power. It is an act of profound vulnerability. In that moment, the petitioner is defenseless, their neck exposed, their eyes blinded by the floor. It is the ultimate expression of trust, or more accurately, the ultimate acknowledgement of a power so vast that trust is irrelevant. Resistance is unthinkable. This is the raw, unvarnished nature of earthly dominion, a power dynamic that shaped empires for millennia. We can see echoes of it in the reliefs from Persepolis, where subject nations bring tribute to the Persian king of kings, their postures conveying their submission. We read of it in the Amarna letters, where Canaanite vassal kings write to the Egyptian pharaoh, declaring, "I fall at your feet 7 times and 7 times, on my stomach and on my back." The gesture was a universal language of power in the ancient world. The tension here is palpable, and it is a tension that resonates even today. It is the fundamental conflict between the power of the state and the autonomy of the individual. In this Babylonian throne room, the individual is subsumed entirely by the overwhelming authority of the sovereign. There is no room for dissent, no concept of inherent rights, only duties and obligations dictated from the throne. The farmer on the floor is not a citizen in the modern sense. He is a subject, and his body itself is a tool for expressing that status. This gesture, born from fear and fealty, was the bedrock of ancient governance. It held societies together, enforced laws, and built empires upon the bent backs of millions. It was the physical manifestation of a world ordered by a rigid divine hierarchy. But human belief is not static. It flows and adapts, seeking new vessels for its most potent symbols. What happens then when this ultimate symbol of submission to a mortal man is turned toward the heavens? What profound shift in consciousness, what spiritual revolution could take this deeply political act of surrender and transform it into the very language we use to speak to God? Building on that ancient spectacle of royal submission, we trace how this powerful physical language began its remarkable journey from the palace floor to the sacred altar. The vocabulary of fealty did not need to be invented for the divine. It was already there, deeply ingrained in the human psyche. The most profound gesture one could offer the most powerful being they knew, the king, became the natural, intuitive way to address the ultimate power, God. This transition is not a footnote in religious history. It is a foundational shift in the human-divine relationship, and its story is written across the pages of the world's most sacred texts. In the ancient Near East, this transfer was seamless. The Hebrew word for prostration, shakah, appears over 170 times in the Hebrew Bible, and it perfectly illustrates this dual meaning. Jacob bows or performs shakah 7 times to his estranged brother Esau, a gesture of appeasement and respect to a superior. Yet the very same word is used to describe the worship owed to God alone. The first commandment's prohibition against idolatry is a command about, "You shall not bow down to them or serve them." The gesture itself wasn't the issue. The object of the gesture was everything. We see this transfer dramatized in the lives of the patriarchs. Imagine the scene in Genesis. Abraham, sitting at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day, sees 3 strangers approach. He doesn't just greet them, he runs to meet them and bows down to the ground. It is an act of profound hospitality, yes, but it is also an acknowledgement of the sacred presence that has entered his life. Later, when Moses approaches the burning bush, a voice commands him to remove his sandals, for he is on holy ground. Moses' response is instinctive, a primal reaction of awe and terror in the face of the numinous. He hides his face, prostrating himself before the unseeable presence of God. In these moments, the posture of prostration is recontextualized. It is no longer just about acknowledging earthly power. It is about recognizing the transcendent, the holy, the source of all being. It is a physical confession of humanity's finitude in the face of the infinite. This reappropriation of a royal gesture for a divine king, the King of Kings, shaped the very core of Abrahamic theology. This trajectory continues and evolves in the traditions that spring from these roots. In early Christianity, the posture of prayer was a subject of deep theological consideration. While full prostration was practiced, often during penitential rites, kneeling became a more common posture of devotion. Think of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, where, in his moment of ultimate anguish, he fell on his face and prayed. The early Christian martyrs knelt before their executioners, their final act a testament of fealty, not to the Roman emperor, but to their heavenly king. The development of genuflection in the Catholic and Orthodox traditions, the bending of the knee before the consecrated Eucharist, is a direct descendant of this lineage. It is a bow to a king present not on a throne of gold, but under the humble appearance of bread and wine. The gesture's meaning was preserved, but its form was adopted to a new theological reality. In Islam, this transfer reaches its most complete and central expression. The very word salam means submission to the will of God, and this submission is embodied in the act of sujud, the prostration during the 5 daily prayers. During sujud, a Muslim kneels and brings their forehead, nose, hands, knees, and toes to the ground. This is the climax of the prayer cycle, the moment of closest proximity to Allah. The Quran states that the angels themselves were commanded to prostrate before Adam, signifying the special status of humanity. The refusal of Iblis to perform this prostration was the ultimate act of arrogance, the root of his fall. Therefore, for a Muslim, performing sujud is a powerful act of humility that realigns the self with the cosmic order, an antidote to the pride that separates one from God. It is a direct and unmediated continuation of the ancient gesture, but its object is exclusively the one, transcendent Creator. It is a radical declaration that only God is worthy of such total submission. The physical act did not just express a pre-existing theology, it actively shaped it. How does the feeling of the earth against your forehead change your understanding of God? How does the humbling of the body elevate the spirit? Extending that theological evolution, the posture of humility continues to resonate across global faiths, challenging our modern understanding of power and self, often in ways that have nothing to do with a single creator God. The physical grammar of submission, born in a king's court and adopted by Abrahamic faiths, found parallel expressions and entirely new meanings in the spiritual landscapes of the East. Journey with us to the Barkhor circuit surrounding the Jokong Temple in Lhasa, Tibet. Here, you will witness pilgrims undertaking a devotional practice of staggering physicality. They perform full-body prostrations, not just in a temple, but for miles on end. They stand, raise their hands above their heads, bring them to their face and heart, and then slide their entire body forward onto the ground, arms outstretched. Then they rise and repeat, their progress measured one body length at a time. This is not an act of submission to a divine sovereign in the Western sense. In Tibetan Buddhism, this practice is a powerful method for purifying negative karma and, most importantly, for dismantling the ego. The Buddha taught that the root of all suffering is attachment, aversion, and ignorance, all of which are fueled by a false sense of a solid, separate self, the ego. The physical act of prostration is a direct assault on this ego. It is a practice of surrender, not to an external king, but to the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Each prostration is a letting go of pride, arrogance, and self-importance. It is a physical manifestation of the understanding that the self is not a fixed entity to be defended, but a transient process to be understood and ultimately transcended. The forehead touching the ground symbolizes the humbling of the deluded mind before the potential for wisdom. It is a tool for transformation, a physical discipline aimed at achieving an internal state of liberation. The gesture looks the same as the one in Hammurabi's court, but its philosophical engine has been completely rebuilt. It is no longer about external power dynamics, but about internal psychological freedom. This deep cultural resonance of bowing and prostration as a marker of social and spiritual reality is profoundly evident in East Asia. In Japan, the act of bowing, wasari-atsu, is an intricate and essential part of social interaction, a nuanced language of respect, gratitude, and apology. But there exists a deeper, more extreme form. This is the act of kneeling directly on the ground and bowing to touch one's head to the floor. Historically, it was a gesture of extreme deference to a feudal lord, the daimyo. Today, it is reserved for the most serious of situations, a profound apology for a grievous error, or a desperate plea for an immense favor. When a corporate executive performs in a press conference after a scandal, they are engaging in a form of social ritual that taps into these deep historical veins of submission and accountability. It is a public act of ego negation, a declaration that one's personal status is nothing compared to the harm caused or the favor asked. Here, then, is the collision point with the modern, globalized, largely Western-influenced world. In a culture that increasingly champions radical individualism, self-assertion, and the questioning of all hierarchies, what place is there for such a gesture? The act of bowing, let alone full prostration, can be seen as antiquated, demeaning, or even a symbol of oppression. It runs counter to the popular ethos of standing up for yourself and being your own person. Critics might argue that these postures are relics of feudal and patriarchal systems designed to enforce conformity and suppress individual dignity. Yet, for millions of practitioners, these physical acts are anything but disempowering. For the Muslim, it is the moment of ultimate empowerment through connection to the divine. For the Buddhist pilgrim, it is the path to liberation from the prison of the self. For the person performing waji, it is a powerful tool for social repair. The forgotten bow, once a chain of fealty to an earthly king, has become a key, unlocking different doors for different souls. A door to divine submission, a door to the death of the ego, a door to profound respect. The posture remains, a silent, physical testament to our enduring human search for something to look up to, even if it means we must first look down.